What's up, guys? Welcome back to the workshop. Today is going to be a fun episode. We've got Joey on with us. Joey's the man behind the new Rolling Knife Sharpener. Not just that one, but that's our latest, greatest thing that you've done. Before we jump into that, get to know you a little bit more and some of the projects you've worked on in the past. Tell us a little about your background, how you got into design, and yeah, a little bit about your history, man.
Well, I started at Boeing in 1990 after I started college. They actually came in and had a big hiring spree, and so they came in and hired a bunch of people that were going to school, put them through. I went through a 2-month intensive training on how to design and draft the Boeing way.
Okay.
And then you weren't guaranteed anything from that, but I ended up getting a job and started in January 1990.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And how did you like the Boeing way? Did you learn a lot with that, or how did that lead into?
That's interesting. You know, when I first started there, it was suit and tie. I mean, ties were mandatory, and they had literally just stopped smoking in the offices.
So what if cigarettes are dangerous? You're a man.
So you can imagine what the office environment was like. But yeah, I mean, some of the guys still had ashtrays on their desks. But yeah, it was an interesting start. Obviously, it gave me a lot of options going forward. You know, people like hiring somebody out of Boeing that has Boeing background. So it was an interesting kind of catapult into my career. And then from there, I was I worked everywhere from doing airplanes to I worked at Nike for a few years.
Oh.
And then designing everything in between. So it's a really good platform for being able to design different products across a vast array, I guess.
Yeah, man, that's crazy background to end up making knife sharpeners, man.
It's true. Yeah.
How'd you end up here?
You know, I was working in Indiana in automotive for a company called Kimball Electronics, and I was looking to get back. You know, I grew up in Oregon, and so the Northwest was kind of home, and so I was looking to get back here. Indiana was nice. It was a good experience in knowing that I don't really want to live in the Midwest.
Okay.
And so I was looking to find a way back here. And back when Worksharp was still called Derek's, I got hired in back then, and that was at the beginning of kind of in the middle of the Drill Doctor days.
So were you working on Drill Doctor when you first?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I finished up what was called the Drill Doctor 300 at that time, which was the original Drill Doctor platform.
Okay.
And then I was part of the design team that built what we called Gen X, which is what you see now in the market for Drill Doctor. Yeah.
Nice. What other, as far as worksharp products go, that people might recognize that you got your hands on or had your?
Well, most recently, I redesigned the original KTS.
Okay.
So I was responsible for the latest design of the KTS Mark II. I was also early on designed for the.
Okay.
So that's probably a little early, but. One product that I did for Worksharp that's probably not really well known is the Worksharp 2000, which was akin to the Worksharp 3000. It was more, the Worksharp 3000 was very focused towards wood sharpening tools, and this was more bench grinder focused, and it was worked off of a horizontal grinding disc platform that people weren't real familiar with. And so it didn't do so well, and I think it's since been taken off the market. But
Fair
that was probably early on Worksharp stuff.
Yeah, so you've been here through basically all of Worksharp's life cycle as far as.
Yeah, I have. I did take. I worked here for almost 10 years. I started in 2001, and I left in 2011, so right at 10 years. And I went and ran the R&D department for a local company called Cropper Medical, designing medical braces, and so I ran their R&D department for 6 years, and then an opening came to come back here, and here I am.
Nice.
6 years later now. So yeah, between the two stints, about 16 years total.
Oh man, the amount of, I don't know, just tons of different types of design and that you've done. We're lucky to have you. It sounds like number one, and then number two, man. What's kept you around? What keeps you wanting to do sharpeners of all the things, airplanes, all that stuff?
You know, it's really the culture of Worksharp. It's not so much the products, right. And there's enough. The cool thing about sharpening is is there's no real one way to do it, you know, and we've kind of not only accommodated that, but you know, almost adopted that as a way of building our product profile out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you have everything from the DMS projects, which I was a big part of, to the rolling sharpener, to our belt-driven systems, you know, with the KTS and the KO. So it's a little bit more dynamic than you would think, being a sharpening company and sharpening focused. So yeah, I mean, it's not to say that, you know, I'm not looking to do something else outside of sharpening.
Right.
But you know, it's the rolling sharpener was like okay, here's one more way of doing it.
Yeah.
You know,
So when the rolling knife sharpener was brought to you, as far as like, hey, we're looking at this category of sharpening, we want you to design one for us. What did you think of that sharpener when you first saw it? Were you like, is this thing a joke? What were your first impressions of the category?
You know, at first, before I used it, I was like, I didn't really get it. I mean, it made sense conceptually. But once I started playing with it, there was something almost therapeutic about it. You know, it's
It was like that whetstone thing almost.
yeah, you know, if you think about it, it's like it's like, I don't want to get too hippy dippy, but it's kind of zen-like, you know. It's like there's a noise that's associated with it. It felt a little bit cumbersome to me, to be honest. Even though I could get a knife sharp, it took a long time to get there. So I saw a lot of like areas where we could improve for sure.
Yeah, and so you kind of started out seeing what was out there, and so like, talk to me a little bit about some of your early designs here that you kind of went through to.
Well, this was actually kind of, you know, at this point I was still looking at 2 discs. I was trying to get a better, safer way to hold it. The canister just felt, you know, if I just rotate this over so it's like more of a canister, I felt like I always wanted to grip it down behind it. Even in this scenario, it was like I was still being forced to hold it upright. And I wanted to be down away from the blade. You know, when you get the blade set up here, I just felt really
Cramped.
uneasy. Yeah, I felt uneasy that I was literally running my hand down along the edge of the blade. And so then it just kept pushing me towards, okay, well, we're kind of a grip progression company. We're the experts, I would say, in grip progression. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to swap out discs regularly, do I need 2 discs? And that all of a sudden opened up, okay, so if I get rid of this, then I could actually grip it here.
Yeah.
And then in doing so, it was like, okay, so then do I stick with one smaller wheel back here to get it out of my way and maybe hide it in? And then it came to the conclusion that just having 3 points of contact would give me the most stability, but still give me control. And so that's kind of where I kind of ended up in this form factor.
Okay.
Using, obviously this is just an early on prototype that hasn't been built out completely, but you know, it just gave me, I felt more secure back here. I felt control however I wanted to do this. I wasn't stuck with like this almost robotic motion.
Sure.
It felt more natural for me to get behind it a little bit more and safer. That was the big thing.
Yeah, so that was a thing I was gonna say. What I'm hearing is like one of the main reasons you went to this form factor to begin with was comfort and safety. It was the driving force behind that.
Yep.
Then you saw some opportunities to improve the category too, it sounds like. So a little more nimble with the 3 wheels.
Yeah, and you know, it was funny because when I first showed it to people, they would put it on the desk and they would do this, and it was kind of squirrely, and I was like, yeah, but you know, once you have, it's like squirrely up until you put it to the blade, and then that squirreliness lends itself to being able to follow the blade, especially on some of the more pronounced blade curves and geometries where you want to keep that contact all the way to the point.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I found challenging with the existing sharpeners in the category is that big wheel makes it difficult to want to make that turn. And the smaller wheels makes it just easier to follow the curvature of that blade.
I mean, I think it's part of that because you have the 2 smaller wheels in the back. But you know, it's also the single axle design. You know, when both of them are rotating together, it's hard to turn. You know, it's kind of like they put a straight axle on a dragster because they wanted to go straight.
Right.
You know, and so it's that the tendency is for it to go straight. You have to actually fight it going straight. And so I think, you know, like how people refer to the squirreliness, that's what gives you the ability to maintain edge contact.
Yeah. And then you mentioned grip progression before. That was another spot you saw that you need to be able to switch discs out.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Just be able to refine an edge quicker.
Yeah, well, and you know, it's what I was seeing out there wasn't aggressive enough discs. They were starting really high. So if you ever had to reshape anything or even just getting it to the angle that you wanted to sharpen it, it would just take forever. And so, you know, taking from some of our manual sharpeners that go from 320 to 600 to ceramic, that felt like the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I definitely played with different places, you know, went down as far as 220, and up as far as 1200.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, I played a lot with what that felt like, and I wanted to give a 3-disc solution out of the box. And so I felt like this was the best combination of grit removal and refinement.
Okay. Now, you were saying that you were actually pretty impressed with the edge that you can put on with this type of sharpening, this style of sharpening as well. And it kind of opened my eyes to it. You were saying that because of it, you can actually get a more even profile. Explain a little bit about.
Yeah,
I'm doing a terrible job. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you were doing fine. We'll see if I can botch that. You know, I think as long as you're maintaining contact with the edge, because it's holding the blade at a specific angle and the sharpener is always at vertical, you can have a consistent edge probably more than any other sharpening method. And I found it, like, even to the point where that's where the tip of the knife is probably the most difficult to keep a consistent edge throughout the belly, is this really like maintains almost like dynamic, you know. If you could like draw a line down it, it would parallel the actual cutting edge.
Yeah.
Almost identical.
It makes sense when you think about it and when you walk through it in your mind like that, but just for whatever reason, when I look at this form factor, I wouldn't think that initially.
No, because there's nothing about it that says precision.
Right.
I mean, literally, there's nothing. Obviously, the angles of the block provide a guide, but you don't look at it and go, oh, this is going to be really precise.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing, is having really good magnetic contact. And so finding magnets that were strong enough and yet a grippable, thin enough surface that allows you to get that magnetic contact to the knife without scratching it was another key. You know, so the magnets are literally 20 to 25 thousandths from the surface of the knife.
Wow.
And that's where I think where we get that strong connection that doesn't allow your knife to kind of tip as you get that more leverage out towards it at the end of it, especially a long kitchen knife.
Yeah, and I noticed, talk to me about the block a little bit. You went longer on the 17 and the 15 and a little shorter on the 20 and the 25. Is that just because of the kitchen knives specifically when you started with the longer angles there?
Yeah, I had originally built 2 blocks because one of the things that we did going into this project, we identified we wanted, because we are worksharp and a big part of our customer base is dealing with EDCs, pocket knives, those types of things. We wanted to do those as good as possible on this platform, knowing that it's more suited for kitchen knives. And so having the shorter block side gets to the shorter knives, because if the blade is hidden within the block, then you can't get to the edge. Yeah. And then one of the things that I found is when you have a knife that, like a kitchen knife, has one primary, so it's typically one surface. A lot of the EDC and pocket knives, even some of the fixed blade knives, have a secondary grind. Yeah. And so fighting that flat grind to the secondary grind on the shorter knives, even, it was hard to get that because your magnets are only holding on a certain part. And so then I created the little ledge underneath that I don't think people have really gotten so far, but there's actually steps in there so to accommodate different widths of your blade thickness. So then it kind of locks the bottom of the blade in
place.
So you can keep good surface contact and not have it tip up because of that secondary grind.
I don't think I even had picked up on that yet, so that's cool to point out. And I don't think it's any secret, like this is designed primarily for kitchen knives, but being work sharp, like you said, we want to be able to accommodate being able to do pocket knives and stuff like that too. And you did it with intention to where to be able to get it done.
Yeah, hopefully awesome. People will figure it out.
Yeah, I think they will. All right, Joey, so what's next for you, man? Can you give us any hints on anything that's coming up, or what projects are you working on after the Rolling Knife Sharpener?
Well, you know, it's the Rolling Sharpener, I think, has some legs. I think there's some opportunities to take some advantage of some different abrasive options.
Oh, cool.
You know, maybe motorize it. You know, so I think there's some things there, but you know, some of the research we're doing, both in marketing, kind of a shared research project within marketing and new product development, is just looking at what maybe adjacent sandboxes there are to our current offerings. What would be aligned with sharpening, but maybe push us a little to a different customer base or into a slightly different market.
All right.
But I think there's, you know, a company has to progress, and a company, and if you want to maintain your market share, you got to keep moving with the products that are getting you there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, expanding your offering, and we'll see what happens from there.
Cool. Thanks, man. I just want to look at the audience and say, guys, if you've got questions, this is the man behind what comes next. So, like, leave comments down below. What do you want to see next from us? What do you want to see more of from our current products, whether it's the Rolling Knife Sharpener or anything else? This is where it starts. It's this guy right here. So, thanks, Joey. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. And if you guys have questions or anything like that, leave them down below. Thanks for watching, guys.